We've done it. We have arrived.
Fucking made it, mate. Lovely to see you this morning, dude.
You too, brother. You too.
How's your morning been so far?
Upregulated. Chose to sleep in this morning. It's the first time I've done that in a very, very long time. The benefits of sleeping in for me are quite replenishing, and the long-term effects are not good because as soon as I sleep in, everything else gets pushed back.
Yeah. Like, do you feel like you are behind the eight ball now, or you're like, I should have just got up, or like you're like, no, I'm content with that decision because it's in my head, if I'm going to be honest.
Me too. So I'm not a person who, like, if I'm going to sleep in or I'm going to miss something, I don't just lay in bed, switch the alarm. Like, I'll get up at the time that I get up, which is 0400. I'll walk around, and then in that space, if I'm walking around and going, okay, the body's tired, like something needs to change, I'll make the change then. And then if I choose to go back to bed and sleep, I now know that the rest of my day needs to be pretty well structured and strategic about how I expend my energy.
Yeah.
I took 20 minutes just then, we got the kids off, Cass took the kids to school, we got them off. And as soon as they left, I jumped straight into meditation, some breath work, and just okay, let's just settle a little bit,
Yeah, so good. That's really, really cool, dude. And even just to give the context to anyone that might listen to this later on, it's like you and I have had some pretty meaningful and powerful conversations in DMs, and it's like, like them conversations have led to like a friendship and a relationship, and we're like start catching up, and at the very least just record it for us. And if we share it with other people or we put it on other platforms and someone might get something out of it, then it's a win for them, and it is what it is. So I think for me, at least, it's cool to be able to build some structure with you and just create. It was one thing that I try to give a lot of energy to, right? It's like manufacturing conversations. And if I can manufacture a conversation with you, like we have words and we share words and we put them in different contexts and different sentences and they mean different things. And if that can create value for someone, then I'm stoked. Yeah, it's cool.
Agreed. It's been a real passion of late. This year specifically, I chose to knuckle down and really start studying and researching the way that I'm intentional with words and how I create dialogues and thought models with people.
Yeah.
I find a lot of passion when I'm facilitating being able to speak value or give education to men specifically at the moment, but holistically everybody. And I was like, okay, I really enjoy this thing. And I notice when I'm in this space that I'm feeling really good about, talking, speaking, and creating thought models and dialogue. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna focus on that. And I've spent from January to now really studying with different coaches and watching people that I admire. And what I've found from being in this space specifically is I'm bringing more out of myself. I'm finding parts of myself that I was like, I'll get off a conversation, I'm like, oh shit. And then I'll go and reflect on that. And I was like, oh wow. So like this intention of creating, this container of talking about different elements of whether it's, us in our personal and professional lives or whatever it is. I know there are people out there that are wanting to hear this type of thing because they're thinking the same thing, right?
Correct. And I think you can become complacent too, like a tight little circle of like people that share the same values, have the very ambitious people. It's like you can become complacent to think that everyone is like that over time. And there's that guy that's isolated in an undesirable or toxic work or relationship, and they don't know who to turn to, right? Because I was that person at one stage too, right? I was in a toxic and working environment and I didn't know who to turn to because everyone around me was that toxic person. And then I used to seek advice from books and podcasts, and like we've all heard that saying, like you're an average of the 5 people you hang around, blah, blah, blah. But it's like what I learned that was powerful for me is that they don't have to be 5 physical people. They could be 5 authors. Or they could be 3 authors and 2 podcast hosts. Like we have so much access to other people that we've never had before. And I had this thought the other day, right? And it's like, for example, a book. A book is just like a combination of words in paragraphs and then, in sentences. And the interesting part that really stuck out to me was that in a book, there's no words invented in books, right? There's just there's just words that are placed in different structures and patterns that mean different things. And I was like, that's pretty crazy that all these words in this book are all the same words in that book, but it has a completely different message because it was structured in a way that is more impactful or resonates with the person. Yeah, really interesting when I sort of broke it down like that. I was like, a good author is someone that can structure words in a way that creates meaning, which I think is a mad skill.
Yeah, man, we're biased researchers in that space, like we're looking for that one message that we want to hear that we can hold and work with. And the way that the words are constructed around, like if you take a book, there is one message for the book, right? If you pick up the title and you look at it, there's one message to the book. There's several lessons inside of the book itself, inside of the literature, but the one message is present, and we're looking for that one message. So we will go seek it out. Yeah. What I find really special about that, this is a pretty cool fact, actually. Do you know what the word abracadabra means?
I thought it was when you do a magic trick.
It is. And most people believe, like when you ask people that, do you know what abracadabra? They're like, oh, magic or whatever it is. But abracadabra is Aramaic for with my words I create, right? And you take the word spelling, shorten that, spells. So words carry vibrations, they carry spells. And when we speak them, they carry that message. Right? Yeah. And so when we're talking or looking for that literature, we're looking for that spell that we want to initiate that thought model to create, or just create in general. Because when we read, we're looking for that lesson, we're looking for that next piece that we can go and create in our own realities. And I find that really special, because if you're looking for it, that more often than not, you're going to find what you need to find, whether it's the message or not, you're going to get the lesson that you need to do. Now, the complacency is us going about our realities as individual people and not sharing that or creating that 5 degrees of separation or the sphere of influence. But when you bring it together, like when you bring 5 men into a container vibrating off the same frequency, and you put them in a space and say, all right, talk. Each person's going to share their perspective of their reality. Yeah. By the end of the conversation, there's one message, and we're all vibrating off that frequency, and you go forward and then you catch up again, you do the same thing. And progressively, we're moving towards that reality that we're all seeking. But at the same time, we're bringing these things out of ourselves that weren't there necessarily if we'd gone on the path by ourselves. Yeah. That's the power of connection, the power of community, the power and magic of words.
And I think too, like what you just said before is like the spell, blah, blah, blah. It's like there's so many words that have meanings that we're just totally blasé towards, right? Like for another one is like breakfast. Like breakfast is like a treat, like a word that's like have a bowl of cereal. When you look at the word, it's like breaking the fast, right? Yep. Break fast. It's not hidden, but it's crazy that we're just like sort of blasé towards it, because it's just like going through the motion of like what is normally and acceptable.
It's automatic. And like living with intention means finding those specific moments where it might be a word, it might be a narrative, it might be somewhere where you're existing in society, taking that and going, what does that mean? Extrapolating upon that space or context and going, okay, what does that mean? Breakfast, break fast. Okay, I've slept, breaking the fast. What does that mean? Am I intentional with the way I consume nutrition? Am I intentional with the way I allow my body to wake up and get into the process? Am I intentional before I go to bed, downregulate and allow this meat suit to go into the space where it needs to downregulate, rest and digest all of the things? So taking those words, those moments, those conversations, extrapolating upon them and being like, okay, what's my intention with this? Because people are quite happy to live in that robotic life of being like, oh, breakfast. Yeah, I wake up, do the cereal. Okay, I wonder why I'm unhealthy. Right. Yeah. And we move into that. And so being intentional with the way that we live just completely changes everything.
Yeah, agree, dude. And meaning behind words, I have this fascination. I've given like a lot of thought towards the 2 different words that can be sort of put in the same basket, and that's ease and simplicity. So the thing for me is like, I think naturally our body or our mind is like always erring on the side of less, right? It wants to like do less to like prolong whatever it is we're doing. Because when we put our body under stress or we put our body under pressure, it's like, what's going on? Like, we want longevity, and to have longevity, we must like do less. I think the trap is that people don't identify the 2 different things between simplicity and ease, and they just always lean to ease and they never push it. But for me, it's like, I want to search for simplicity in life. And like a perfect example of that is like doing breath work, right? Breathing is very simple. We do it all day, but when you do it with intention, it's hard. We can say that breathing is easy, or we can say that it's simple, or we can say that it's easy, but it's not simple, or the other way around. Sorry, breathing is simple, but it's not easy, because when we do it with intention, it's hard. For me, at least, I want to search for simplicity. I do not want to search for ease, because I don't think there's any growth in ease. I think there's growth in simplicity. So it's like doing hard things in a really simple way, like sitting in a room in the dark, concentrating on breath is extremely simple and definitely not easy. Running is simple, but when you run across the country like you mad dog. It's not easy, right? It's not easy. So it's
It
like,
is not easy.
the actual task is simple, but it's certainly not easy.
Not at all. And they work interchangeably. Like ease could mean taking the path of less resistance, but later on it's not going to be simple. You're going to have a lot more challenging and resistance type scenarios. But if you practice the simple, it does become easy because you get so good at focusing on what your purpose and intention is with the practice. Breathing is not simple, although we do it 25,000 times a day on average, which means there's 25,000 moments where you can become intentional with the way you're regulating your nervous system. But that's not easy, because how many are we going to stop 25,000 times a day? We're not going to stop 25,000 times a day. The body's going to breathe because it needs to survive and it wants to survive. But if we can take those moments of simplicity and turn them into long-term ease, the same is also true. You can take 5-10 moments a day where you just tune in and focus on 2 minutes of breathing in and out of the nose into the belly. And that might be the difference, or the 1% between how you arrive at the end of your day or show up for the next. If you chose the easy route, all right, I'm just going to do 10-15 minutes in the morning, that's easy, right? You can wake up, you can do that thing, but the rest of the day might not be so simple either. Right. So there's long-term effects to both. Yeah.
What's your breathing look like? Do you breathe with intention once a day, 3 times a day, twice a day, 10 times a day?
Honestly, I have gotten to a point now, my everyday life, where I'm so conscious of my breath that the first biological reflexes that occur, whether I'm breathing out of my mouth up into the chest, whether I'm feeling that flood of adrenaline and cortisol, which I'm really sensitive to now, that stimulates me to go, oh shit, okay, my nervous system's reacting to something. What is that?
Yeah.
And it's not simple to go, what is that thing? Because it could be a myriad of things, right? It could be in the environment. It could be my environment that I'm working in that's signaling me to create stress in the body. It could be somebody in their energetic exchange with me in that moment. It could be a financial thing, it could be a work thing, it could be anything. And so for me, I've become really sensitive to those moments. They hit and I'm aware and I stop, because I know the long-term effects of me not stopping are detrimental to my health. Like I've been studying breathwork for just over 7 years. Closer to 10, but just over 7 professionally. What I've come to learn in the industry of breathwork is there's all these different protocols, and breathwork as a practice is not new. You know, Wim Hof brought it to the scene over a decade ago. Very cool. Paved the way for a lot of us, but there's not one protocol that does one thing, right? They do a variety of things. The importance of breathwork is knowing how to regulate the nervous system, how to regulate and modulate stress and stress hormones, and knowing in that moment what is signaling that stress to occur. You can apply any type of breath protocol and it's going to create a state change in your nervous system. Now, for some people with breathwork, they're waking up, they're doing Wim Hof the first part of their day, they may be already upregulated as right? They may be stressed, waking up stressed, and then you're going and applying Tumo type breathing, which is Wim Hof, which upregulates you more. Now, it might get you into that drive mode, that warrior spirit. I want to dominate. But by the end of the week, your cup's completely empty and you're wondering why. Where you could apply something a bit different. So just learning how to regulate the nervous system, knowing how your biology is interacting in its environments, depending on the information being received, is when and where you would apply specific types of breath. The best thing we can do as humans, specifically living in a world of so much stimulus and arousal, is simply down regulating at any one time, because finding that stillness is what we're all missing out on and what we're neglecting. Even for men like ourselves, we're driven, we're purposeful, we're intentional about the way that we live, the way that we conduct ourselves in our personal and professional lives. We could apply a breathwork protocol that stimulates us and gets us into flow state. We could do that. But at any one moment of the day, it is never going to be detrimental for us to take a moment of stillness and just breathe in and out of the nose, into the belly, and just be like, okay, what's the next task? Transition to the next task, right? And just follow along that thing. So when people ask me, what kind of breath work do you do? All of it. It's all relevant. It's just about regulating your nervous system.
Yeah. I think I remember when I first sort of come across breath work or people breathing with intention was the Gracies in Brazil. Like them guys, like breathing on the beach. I remember like watching a documentary on one of the Gracies. It was just, I actually remember, I can see it super clear. It's like inhale, it's just like his whole big diaphragm, and like just being able to control that is incredible, especially like for them guys when they are under stress, right? Like someone's trying to choke them, or they're trying to get longevity in wrestling or grappling. It's pretty cool. And the thing is as well, like when you're talking about like regulating your hormones, even something as little as, I've become complacent with this. I live in a regional town and I can go outside and I can see the stars every single night, right? Very bright. I get up early in the morning and I just look at the stars. I'm like, it's bananas to me, man. That's not more of a bigger deal. It's like there's stars everywhere and like no one's really talking about it. It's pretty crazy to me. And a lot of people don't even get to see that, right? They live in like really high density areas and there's a lot of light pollution, even just like the white noise of like traffic. Like a lot of people, man, don't know what it's like to not listen to that at all. When you can find yourself in an environment where there is no light pollution or no noise pollution, it's a incredible place to be. Like you feel lighter, you feel like way more free. There's a level of anxiety that like it sucks a level of energy, like just that little bit of that light or a little bit of, it's like clutter. It's like when you live in a lot of clutter or you have a lot of shit around, it just takes energy off you because you have to move one thing here or you need to try to find that one thing there. It takes time and energy.
They are portals, mate.
Yeah.
They're portals into the sky. Like it's a backlit canopy and we don't spend enough time looking at it, you know?
No. Yeah. Yeah. It's fucking bananas, especially on a really night. Right now it's perfect because it's like the nights are cool and dark and like there's a lot of darkness. Like the sun goes down early and the sun comes up, later. So there's a lot of darkness for us to be able to spend time outside. And man, like that window of time for me in the morning is the most precious time for me because I'll nurture it forever because it's so special. Like we get to glimpse at the stars, we get to look at the moon and then get to witness the sunrise. Magical, dude.
It's interesting that comment on Gracie because that was the first time I ever heard of breathwork as well. The original Gracie, and I remember him saying he was running a drill with some students, and he stopped them all and said, "As soon as you know your opponent, or you can see your opponent is breathing out of the mouth, you've got him." That breathing out of the mouth up into the chest is a stimulation of stress or a stress arousal, and if that's the case, that person is cognitively thinking about what's the next move because I'm against the ropes right now. And so he employed this technique of keeping yourself so calm and relaxed, even under duress or adverse conditions. Keep yourself calm and relaxed because you're going to be more rational in the way that you think and solve problems. And that to me was super potent because you take that exact scenario and you put it in everyday life. It's still pertinent, right? It's still pertinent. Exactly what you're saying about the environment, which is why I'm so passionate about that and really try to teach that to students and people when I'm giving value is your environments carry information, right? Like this pen, it's just a pen to most people, but it's information because when I hold the pen, not only fine motor skills and functions working for me, so my brain's doing things on how to carry the weight, how to hold it precisely, but even the color of the pen is relating to my system because I have an association with whatever that means. Now I could go deep into what the pen means to me and you could break it down, but just to keep it surface level, like it carries information. And if I'm sitting in an environment where there's plenty of things carrying information, or I'm living in an environment that carries lots of information, that is signaling my biology all the time. I'm not getting a chance to switch off. And what I found with working with people across the globe that live in maybe regional, more rural geographical locations versus people that live in built up metropolitan type environments, the difference being is most of the people that are living in rural amongst nature, amongst the elements, are a lot less upregulated because there's not as much stimulus. And it's a no-brainer really when you look at it. When teaching stuff as how to regulate the nervous system, they're not relating the same because somebody who's in metropolitan is stressed because of their environment that's signaling them, not necessarily about the things that are superficial to the people that are in the rural environment. So work, traffic, people, finance, all of those things. They're more conditioned in the metropolitan environment to be able to regulate that because they're there all the time. They're conditioned to it. But the people that are in the rural environments aren't so exposed to it more often than not. Their stress is a little bit different. So finding the space in between as to like observing, like I said, with mine in my daily practice, observing when I'm triggered and that stress arousal comes and then knowing how to regulate that because stress is different to everybody. And it's very important. Stress is very important in our life, but knowing how to regulate that. But more often than not, people who are in rural areas with like a lot of nature, a lot of natural elements have a lot longer lifespan, a lot more vitality in life, usually a lot happier as well.
Yeah.
People in the other environment are not so much.
Yeah. That pen, it sort of triggered something for me. It's like when, like another thing to add to that too, right? It's like, it's the pen, et cetera. But it's like, if that pen was a gift from your partner or your mother, then it carries another layer of energy, right? It could be just a pen to me, but it's something that comes with a lot of thought and feeling for you.
That's funny you say that, man. This pen says Nepean CrossFit, right? One of my daughters left it here. they live in Sydney, in West Sydney, and their mum owns a gym, the Pen CrossFit.
Yeah.
Now, to me, I'm unattached, or I'm not even unattached. Just there's no association other than the fact that it's a pen.
Yeah.
But the old part of myself that was less likely and observant to the things that could be sitting there, I'm looking at it. My association is taking me back to a moment in my past marriage where, all the things could happen. That stimulates that thing. So we could be sitting here talking, and if I see that out of my peripheral, that's triggering me. So I'm off track now. I'm not present, right? And that could be anything in your environment.
Yeah. There's have you read any books from Michael A. Singer?
Surrender Experiment.
Yeah. So have you read his other one? The Surrender Experiment is an incredible book. He wrote that first, and then he wrote one after it. It's the Unearthed Soul.
Yeah.
There's a part in that book towards the beginning of it, and it's exactly what you're talking about now. It's like we could be driving down the road, and like there's always these voices in our head, right? Like, oh, palm tree, blue car, red car. Oh, there's a dog. Like, just subconsciously things. And it's like you could have, in your like 20 years ago, you could have had your girlfriend or your boyfriend cheat on you with a guy that drove a blue Mustang, and that could be 20 years down the road, and you could be driving, and then you see two people in a blue Mustang. You're like, oh, fuck. And you just think of, that negative tire. And it's so crazy because it's very obvious that memory was like deep, active, like asleep. And then you've brought it, like a blue car has brought that back into your, front of mind, and it's taken energy from you, from something that happened 20 years ago. I have them things all the time happen to me, right? Like you notice it and let it go, but there's an element of energy there. It's crazy.
There is. Well, the letting go part's the most crucial part. Coincidentally, I taught this lesson last night to the brothers in the brotherhood. And what we call it is closing loops or grounding cycles, right? Because in life, we go through loops or cycles. The hero's journey, you come across all of these different stages and you return back to the start and then you start again. In our life, we have all of these different scenarios, relationships, jobs, moments in life that are part of a loop. Now, if we've chosen at that very moment not to close that loop officially, that will return and continue to oscillate. And so that exact example of like having that relationship to that person with the blue car, we've not closed that loop. And we carry that and manifest it energetically, and then it turns into a physical manifestation. So closing that loop could mean going back to that very moment, observing what happened, how you negotiated, how you could negotiate it now, because you don't have the same mind that created the same problem, as Einstein would say. And so you get to go back to that moment, that relationship with that blue car. I need to go back and have a conversation with that person, just, close that loop. And it might be as simple as ringing that previous partner and being like, hey, I'm elsewhere in life now, but just wanted to reach out and apologize or communicate. There was a lot of things that were left unfinished. Are you open to, or do I have your permission to work through this together? Yes or no? And if it's a no, the loop remains open. If it's a yes, you get to close that together. The next time you go past the blue car, the stimulus is different. You're reminding yourself of a moment where you went back and closed it and were like, blue car. So proud of myself. Wow, completely different stimulus.
And it's a little bit like when you hear the stories about, like say like a close family member or a child or a father was murdered by someone, and then that family forgives the person, right? They're like, hey, this happened. Or like in some instances, the family will turn up in support of the person that murdered their family, and they're like, we want to help them. We understand that they've made a mistake. We want to help them going forward in life. It's like outside looking in, you're like, how the could you possibly do that? That person murdered your family. But for them, I think it's like, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like closing that. It's like, this has happened, and they can have two choices, right? But it's like, what's worse, carrying that karmic debt forever? Because like then they ruin their own life, right? And I think the karmic debt is like super important, because if we hold on to them things or we do bad things to other people, then the universe won't allow you to win. Simple, right? Like you can't do what you want, or you can't reach your ambitions or goals if you're not living true to yourself, because the universe is watching always, right? So it's like,
keep score.
The way that I describe this is like, if you and I went out to the car park or out to your backyard right now, we just play one-on-one soccer, right? It's like, hey, Will, like we're not going to keep score, dude. We're just having a bit of play. Just it's a break time, right? We go out there and play for 10 minutes. Okay, we can come back inside, and both you and I know who won, right? Like we didn't agree, we never kept score, but I'm like, Will got 2 more goals than what I did, right? So we kept score subconsciously. The universe is doing the same thing, right? So it's like, if I'm a cunt to you, but no one sees it, and I show up and I be this really great person to everyone else, the universe is understanding what's going on. They're like, hey, you're not being true to yourself because you're a cunt to Will and you're really nice to everyone else. So it's like, it doesn't matter, because I'm not putting myself in a position of growth then. A good example is that when I stopped drinking, it's like I would say all these really ambitious things. I want to do this and I want to do that, but then I'll go get drunk, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. You're not putting yourself in a position to be able to receive all these things that you want. And then when I was really deliberate with it and stopped drinking, which is like purpose, what you're talking about before, be purposeful, everything started to improve. And I was like, because I put myself in a position for it to happen, then all of a sudden it happened. Like, it's not an accident. As it was like, I was not in a position to grow before. And now I've put myself in a position to grow. And, it's no surprise that that's exactly what happened. Same as the guys that work with you, I'd imagine, right? It's like, if they're not in your tribe, then it's going to be a lot harder for them to get the same yielding results that the guys in your tribe get, because they're not in the position to receive it. Plain and simple. Like, you can't go there. It's super simple to me. The universe is always watching, and it's always keeping score.
The personal development journey starts with rehabilitation, right? It starts with rehabilitating yourself. And it means all of those things that you just said, because the universe does keep score. Like a brief story, you remember when I was running, I think it was just before the Nullarbor, and I tore my piriformis and I was out for I couldn't run for like 6 days. So I chose to walk. But what I come to realize is in that karmic debt was part of my soul's purpose was to rehabilitate all of the lives prior to this one and then all those preceding. And I got to make a choice whether I wanted to continue to carry that debt or let it go and ground that cycle, close that loop. And I remember sitting in the middle of nowhere. We were just outside of the South Australian border, and my mate River, who was my support crew, he's a sound healer, right? And so I asked him this one day, hey, can we get the instruments back out tonight? We're going to sit under the stars. I need to do some inner work. And he said, yeah, okay, you're not tired? I was like, no, I need to do this. I am tired, but I need to do this. Yeah. I dove back in, got into an altered state of consciousness, completely sober, but through breath work, took myself back to a space where I could regress in life. And what I come to learn was the karmic debt I was carrying was I'd had a mission similar to that one itself in a past life as a native Indian. And I got shot in the hip with an arrow. Right? It was the exact location that I'd torn my piriformis. Now I had a choice to make whether I was going to heal that, rehabilitate myself and close that loop, or continue on and just bite the bullet. And I would have. Mentally, I'm strong enough to keep going, and I would have continued. But I chose the opposite, and I chose to heal that, rehabilitate it, close that loop. 3 days later, I'm back running, And so it becomes this river. I call it the river of abundance. And when we leave the logs in the river, it starts to build up this beaver dam, and the water can't flow. But as soon as you start taking those logs out, whether it's rehabilitation, whether it's awareness, observation, it starts to flow more rapidly, and you can just be in that river of abundance. Finding that in your daily life isn't always easy. And like you say, you need to be open for it, but the space needs to be available. This is a space that's available for us to receive and exchange information because we're open to it. We could go away from this and be like, holy this, that, wow. But there's not necessarily those environments that we can create or are being created other than what we're doing here, right? Like what I'm doing, what you're doing, what we're doing together. And so when men are arriving in this container, what I've noticed is they're a little apprehensive because they've removed themselves from an environment that doesn't necessarily allow them to receive that information. And when they step into it and it's available, they're more open because they're ready to make that transition.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And it's happened to me before too, right? And I'm really interested to learn. It's like them guys that don't, for you, for example, it's like there's so many people that wouldn't do that, like that extra work to try to identify what's going on, to try to work through it, right? They more often than not, I think they just go there and they're like, hey, I need to rest, or I need to stop or quit, right? And then that's what they do. I think all the glory and all the flowers are on the other side of that, right? It's like a test from the universe. It's like, again, when I talk about like putting yourself in a position to growth, I look at them times like it's a test from the universe to say, righto, Will says that he does all these things. Will says that he wants to grow. Will says that he wants to, be a leader and a mentor. But let's see if he has what it takes, because all them things are on the other side of this. And it's like, cool, he worked through it. He passed the test. Congratulations, and then things start working. What I used to find, right, when I was doing the run that I did, it was like when I used to wake up with like really sleep deprived, my mind would play games. It's like, you need to stop. What are you doing? This isn't healthy. Like, you must stop. But then what I found was like one good night's sleep and I'm back. I had nothing to do. My mind wanted me to stop, and it was like creating all these excuses and reasons. It's like, you need to nurse this injury, you need to be mindful of this. But it was really, I just needed a really good night's sleep to sort of reset, and then I was good again. And it made me think, it's like, imagine how many people they go to that where it is like, hey, you need to stop, you can stop. For example, you, right? No one would have judged you if you stopped halfway because of an injury. But deep down, you know, you maybe wouldn't have known, but for the rest of your life, you have to wonder, is like, well, what if I did just push through one more day or 2 days? Would have I come good? And yeah, that was the thing for me. It's like, sometimes there's markers like injury. This is not great. It could be like an environment, like something in your environment, like an argument with your partner, or something happened at work, and we're not pinpointing the correct reasons why that's happening. We're just looking at it like, oh, I got an injury, I must stop right now. Or like, hey, why the am I injured, and what can we do around? I just need a good night's sleep and we're good to go again. It's just sleep for me. Again, I get up early in the morning because I love that window of time. Would it be healthier if I stayed in bed for another 2 hours? Like, likely. There's like a fine line between what I get out of it mentally and physically in the morning. I think sometimes outweighs like that little bit of extra sleep that I would have got. And for me, it's something that I'm aware of. Like, I track it, right? Like, I look at my sleep through Whoop every day. But it's like, I think there's a fine line between getting your full amount of rest. By no means am I saying that we should sleep deprive ourselves. But what I do mean is, it's like, I think we need to err on the side of more and less, like more on the side of more, and then just play around with it. Because the thoughts that I can manufacture early in the morning, sitting under the stars or watching a sunrise, aren't the same things that I can get from, sleeping the extra 20 minutes in some cases.
Absolutely, man. And you can, like, in that space where the mind's playing games, it's telling you not to do the thing. It doesn't mean that you can't rearrange the rest of the day to suit the thing that you want to do and get the things that you need. So it could mean going to bed a little earlier, and that's okay. If you're getting up at 0300 and then choosing to go to bed at 2000, like, that's a good amount of time to be in that space of vitality and health and investment in yourself, let alone arriving at 0300 going, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. This is like, you chose to stay up till 11, 12, whatever it is. So you get to change that as well.
And I think as well, it's like when you have other really positive habitual patterns in your life, like, for example, not using alcohol, you have a healthier sleep, right? So like, what you might get in 7 hours, someone that drinks is not even going to get in 10. Monitored my sleep for about 4.5 years now, and like, so 2 years of that, I was working shift work in a coal mine, 12.5-hour days and nights, and I was also drinking. And it's like, and you look back at that data when I would drink and go to bed, or when I was like really sleep deprived and like hadn't slept for 2 days, it's like the data in there is like scary, man, scary. And like, I could have 10 hours sleep and go to bed like in an intoxicated state and wake up 1% recovered, because my body is just like, because that's the thing, is like, it's not sleep. If you're going to bed drunk, you're not sleeping, you're unconscious. It's a different thing. It's the same as medication, right? You can have like a sleeping pill, but then they don't put you to sleep. You're in an unconscious state. You're a void, and you're not getting any of that really healthy recovery sleep, or that dream state, that REM sleep, the deep sleep.
Absolutely. And those bad habits breed other bad habits as well. I've seen it regularly where people will find themselves in a state of unhealthy behaviors and wondering, if they fix this one thing, will it fix the other? But the problem with that is, when you develop a habit such as that, like an unhealthy one, such as drinking, that breeds other bad habits. The last 2 months I've been focusing, men who drink regularly oftentimes make bad food choices. It just goes hand in hand, right? Like, how many times?
That's me, bro. Me.
How many times, like, our generation growing up out on the town, out till 2 a.m, what's the first thing you do after being drunk, leaving the pub? It's kebab time. It is kebab time, right? Like, so we're making poorer decisions there. Now, if we're making poorer decisions with our health in that respect, what are we doing emotionally? Well, we're chasing the white dragon, that being the dopamine or the oxytocin hit, right? We're chasing that because we don't want to feel this. We felt the goodness in the space of being drunk and being with the boys or whatever it is. Now that we're coming down, because what goes up must come down. Now that we're coming back down, we need to get back up. And so we're now making decisions based upon wanting to chase that dragon. And it's like, there's masturbation, there's porn, there's like being in unhealthy discussions with people that you don't even vibe with, but you're just there because it's automatic. And so it breeds itself into this whole massive habit that is just so unproductive and not beneficial to your health or life in general.
Yeah, correct. When I used to drink, it was 100% me. Like we were talking about CrossFit before, right? Like I was balls deep in CrossFit for the longest time, right? From about 2011, like for 8-9 years. The cool thing about CrossFit, even just from a fundamental point, is like you can learn a lot about the basic nutrition and like what is good food, what is bad food. Like they do a really good job of that, right? Whether you like it or not, it's great for that. So I had like a lot of understanding and a lot of discipline around my food when I didn't drink. And then, so you could go on like a really big training program and you do like a CrossFit comp, and then just you're blind drunk, you're eating bags and you just throw it all out the window like after it, right? You make all these really positive changes, then you bring alcohol into it, then your barrier is just completely removed and you're just making horrendous decisions with there's absolutely no purpose. And then it spirals out of control, like you said, dude, because you're waking up the next day and you feel you're not going for a run in the morning. You're not meditating under the stars. You're sleeping in, you're chasing your tail. You've likely had a argument, with your partner because you said you were going to be home at 8 o'clock and you weren't. And then like you had another negative relationship with the girl that you used to go to school with that you hadn't seen for 4 years. And then you start to think about her, and it's like, it's a nightmare of a situation, right? You totally, when you talk about frequency, there's no control over that frequency at all.
It's very low vibration, very low, and it's dense, man.
Yeah. Without it, I wouldn't have ever thought, like, if you spoke to me like 2.5 years ago and said that, you'll likely never drink again, there's no way I would have thought that would ever be possible, right? Like, it was a big part of my life, and especially it's the environment that I work in. Like, it's a big coal mining community where I live, and like that's what everyone does here. And when I left the coal mining, I left that environment. I was like, wow, like I'm not that person. Like I was doing that because I was a chameleon. In there. Like I was just doing it because that's what everyone else is doing. I wasn't strong enough to identify it or to go, hey, that's not me, and then do what I did. It wasn't until I got myself out of that environment and I was like, wow, this is really who I've always felt like I was, and being able to be confident and content in making the decision that I'm not a drinker. And again, like it's not, I'll go to a pub and sit down with you if you want to drink alcohol, but I'm very confident that I don't even want to be in that environment. Because even this conversation that we're having right now, you can't have this conversation at fucking midnight in a pub somewhere. Like you're not going to have it. It's going to be you're just going to be talking shit to some stranger or some dude. There's going to be no purpose. It's not a deliberate act.
That environment in its essence is men and women going to a space to drown their sorrows and talk about all the negative things that are in their life. It's very rarely that it's positive, because the negative vibration that alcohol carries is it brings that out. There's that old term of having D&Ms, and they're not D&Ms. You're literally just sitting there having therapy because you're unhappy, right?
Yeah.
There's been moments, like I don't drink alcohol either, and if I do drink it, I am actually very intentional about the space that I'm in and who I'm with and what conversations we're having. Now, if I'm in a space, it's usually here at home, and it's probably with Scotty or maybe even Cass of late. We've had a couple of drinks together.
Yeah.
We're sitting down and we're talking about life. Like we might be having a drink because we enjoy the drink, but we're sitting down and we're talking about life. It's constructive towards our next day, the following day, the months, the years preceding that. And so I'm very conscious about how I bring it in, because if that negative vibration of alcohol is coming in, I want to know that it's not being influenced or signaled by the environment holistically. So the next day I'm waking up and I want to drink again, all the things. So very conscious of that pattern. And I'm curious now, like coming from that coal mining environment, when you made that shift, and this is where a lot of fear exists for men specifically, like how many friends did you keep and lose versus each other when you left? That's the fear.
Yeah. If I'm going to be honest, I basically lost them all, like I basically lost them all. And people often say it's like, you need to cut these guys loose, or like if blah, blah, blah. But the way I don't really necessarily look at it like that. I look at it like, because what I found for me personally is that I've grown so much that them guys don't want to be around me because it's exhausting. It's like, why would someone that's not content or confident in who they are as a person, or the decisions that they're making in life, or where they are at in life, you don't put yourself in a position where you're going to feel horrendous about yourself. So what I found is like I outgrow these guys, and they just simply don't want to be around me anymore because it just makes them feel bad. But again, like if they wanted to better themselves and to follow my path, then it's very clear you can do that. But more often than not, they make the decision. It's not even me. It's not me letting them go. It's them staying where they are, and I just outgrow that environment. So, but again, like then I have new relationships and new friendships with people like you that like we've never met physically before, right? But our vibrations and our frequency is on a very similar path. We were drawn together by something as simple as running, and that was a very fundamental common that we had together. And then all of a sudden we start communicating and talking, and it's like, you like that, your values are here, we're very similar. You've got 4 kids, I've got 4 kids, we're similar age, similar backgrounds. It's like all these like really cool things and really cool positive things that happen. So again, I would not have ever met you if I continued to drink. I would not have ever met you if I didn't have purpose around my morning routine. It just like the universe put us together. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree fully. And what I've really appreciated in these later years, because I was the same when I left the military, you know, that environment is an organization that just does not breed autonomy or sovereignty, right? It does not at all. You do what you're told because you paid it. I was thinking about this yesterday, actually. I remember being in the office as a young LAC, so just out of recruit, spent a year as an AC aircraftsman and then became a leading aircraftsman. You're still nothing, like you're still a shit kicker.
Yeah.
But I remember being in the office, and there was at no point was it okay for me to get on Messenger and message one of the homies from another squadron and go, hey, you want to go for a coffee? Because you're not allowed to do that. And I remember having to ask my corporal one day, hey man, is it all right if I go for a coffee? And he's like, no, you've got work to do. And I'm sitting at my computer yesterday going, I can just go for a coffee whenever I want. Like that level of sovereignty didn't exist. But leaving the military, I didn't leave it behind. I grew like you did. I grew into a space, and gradually, because when I left, I still had military friends, not many, but created a few businesses with some of them. And then you get to that point of self-development or spiritual growth that you're like, oh, we're not aligned. And so you don't let them go. They don't let you go. You drift apart. What I really appreciate now about being on the path is that some of those people are starting to come back into my life and be like, hey man, I see you, you're doing this thing that I think that I want. Can you help me? And it's like, absolutely. Like we talked about this 7 years ago, 8 years ago. You weren't there. I was. That's okay. I'm here now. Come join, you know, like that's the thing I really appreciate now.
So cool, man. It's so cool that them guys that a lot of people would almost turn their nose up. And I'm sure that there's guys that with you and there's guys I know for sure do it with me. And it's like, again, I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad, or I don't feel like I'm any better than other people, but it's really hard to hang around with people that are succeeding or winning. And when you talk about, you know, being able to just do like go for that coffee whenever you want, or you say to Cass, it's like, hey, like we drop the kids off at school. Do you want to go have breakfast? Like it's Wednesday. Success to me is like having freedom and flexibility of your time. You do whatever the you want whenever you want. Like that's true success, right? Because if you look at money, it's like you don't know how to build teams, you know how to solve problems, you can make as much money as you ever want or need. So it's like that's not the thing that moves the marker. Yeah, for sure there's an element of it to be able to, you know, give you security and to be comfortable in life and to provide the things and safety for your family. But yeah, the ability to be able to do whatever you want when you want is powerful, dude. It's so powerful. And it's like when you come from that, and it's employment full stop, but especially like coal mining or military, when there's a lot of eyeballs on you, like long shifts, you've got to apply for leave, or you've got to go ask someone to go to the toilet. You got to ask someone to go for a coffee, or like it's torturous. Because I still think that we're still so young. It's like we'd be able to figure this out now, and we get to ride this wave forever. And I know for me, like I'm basically unemployable now. Like I don't think anyone, like I'd be a horrendous employee because I just have way too much focus and value my time too much to be able to go and, you know, clock in and work towards. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't go and work for someone that aligned my values in like a business partnership. I can work my tail up. I'm not going to go and work for someone I don't respect or don't align with.
That level of sovereignty, you just never give back. Once you feel it, you just never give it back, because it's just, it opens up so much. And just to add to the success piece, like the flexibility that you get to have, it's the moment of being able to be present in that as well really influences that level of success. Like I did exactly what you just said yesterday morning. We took the kids to school. I don't normally go with Cass to drop the kids because I'm coming back into work or transitioning into work. But I said, hey, you want to go to breakfast? And Cass had to get a new phone, but we prioritized the time together. So in that moment, I'm like, how present am I? You know, and if I'm like so present, that's success to me, because I've been able to put down the idea that I've got tasks to do when I get home, the kids at school, all of the things, and I'm able to be present with my wife. And so that's huge as well, because there's a lot of men out there who on paper are successful, but can't be in a family dynamic, eating dinner, having whatever it is without their phone there. or like thinking
Correct.
about work. And there's no success in that either, you know?
Yeah, correct. Like you mentioned something, because again, I know we have very similar values with phones or screens and stuff like that, right? It's like, and we have a lot of people that just randomly come and see us. Like we're in a cafe, there's 4 young kids just sitting there, you know, not always patiently. Like sometimes they're noisy, but they don't have phones in front of them, right? They've got no iPads. And it's like crazy that people will walk up and just say like, hey, just want to sort of let you know, like we noticed that your kids aren't on screens, and we think that that's incredibly, like it's so good that you guys are doing that, because my son does this or my son does that. It's like something is so small, like the older generation can identify what we're trying to do and then come and praise us for it. And it's super powerful, man. When my eldest is 9 years old, so I know that it's a lot simpler for me to manage and monitor that at the moment. And I know it's going to be more challenging as they age, but right now, like my kids watch one movie on a Friday night and one movie on a Saturday night. Now TV, it doesn't even have normal TV. It's 2 movies a week. And like they look forward to that. Like it's a treat, right? Previously, when I haven't done that, my kids don't listen. They're not interested in what I want or what we're trying to achieve as a family, whether it be go tidy a room or go to the toilet before dinner or go have a shower. It's like they're brainwashed by this other thing. The cool thing about that is that we're raising these kids in this environment that they don't know that that's not normal. They don't think that like this, like they're aware that their friends get to play video games and stuff like that, but they know that we don't do that in our house. And I think to go back to what we're talking about, having control and freedom, our kids, whilst they might not communicate it right now, we're changing their perception of like what life is. And it's like dad's not getting up and gone before we go to work a lot of the time, and he's here when we sit down to have a dinner as a family. We talk about our day and our thoughts and our feelings. That's the expectation of, you know, what is life and like how a life is lived. And similar to, because I know you've got daughters as well, right? And like I know a lot of men that are like that wanted sons, and it's like, I'm having a daughter. It's like, well, what are you talking? Like it's like a drag that they didn't get another son. Having daughters or having both is like an absolute privilege, but like a daughter especially is like, because as men, we don't only set the example for our sons of like how to be a man and how to lead and, you know, to go through life, but as a father of a young girl, it's like we're setting up the expectation of what you look for in a man and how a man treats you. You know,
Absolutely.
It's like how you, and they're watching, they're so observant, right? It's like, wow, like, oh wow, like dad yells at mum a lot, or like he doesn't show any affection, or he drinks a lot, or he argues a lot, or he's on the phone a lot. Like that is what they expect a normal man or a leader to do. So by rights, we're reducing, you know, their expectation of men. And then, you know, you can't get upset if you do all them things and then they come home with some moron when they're 17 years old.
You just taught them how to do it.
You taught them how to do it. Like that moron is a smaller version of you.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases. Yeah. I think it's amazing if we get to change the perception of what our kids, I said it multiple times when you're doing that run, right? It's like these young kids, like not only do they get to watch it, but they were there. And that has changed their perception of what they think is achievable and attainable for the rest of their life. So that if you didn't get anything other than that, that was a massive success, right? Because they think that, you know, all dads run across the country, you know, and they'll be surprised when they realize it's not true.
It's not true. Look, I haven't had one of them things for maybe 5 years, man. We moved into this place and it was on the wall. I'm like, oh, that's boring. We're not putting anything up there, you know, but it started with that in being present in the household. I have 3 daughters. So I got 2 to another marriage and then a younger one in this one. Yeah. And even the shift, like my 2 other daughters helped me shift the way that I was transitioning out of that past marriage, because it didn't end well and it was a loop I needed to close, but it didn't end well. And they helped me shift my perspective of who I was as a man, because not only are they learning about the relationship I'm in with Cass and now their stepmom, like they're learning how I treat her. That's amazing. But the more important factor was how I was treating their mother. And like that completely flipped the way that I was showing up with my previous wife. And when I started showing up with love and compassion and support and stability, all of the things, they shifted as well. And so it's such an important lesson. Like I resonate when men say that it's a drag to have a girl. It's like, you've just been gifted your greatest teacher in life, because you're never going to step into the full masculine archetype without that feminine just pushing you to your edges, you know? And that comes from raising daughters for sure.
Yeah. No, super interesting. Bro, it's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you this morning. Let's get this up somewhere. We'll create a YouTube or something. Let's just jam it up and let's continue these. It's been an absolute pleasure sharing these thoughts with you, my man.
Oh, bro, same's true for me too.
Legend. Right, a big dog. We'll talk really soon, and I'll see you next week.
Peace.